Dolan's Cadillac by Stephen King. Revenge is a dish best eaten cold. I waited and watched for 7 years. I saw him come and go, Dolan. I watched him stroll into fancy restaurants dressed in a tuxedo, always with a different woman on his arm, and always with his pair of bodyguards bookending him. I watched his hair grow from iron gray to a fashionable silver, while my own simply receded until I was bald. I watched him leave Las Vegas on his regular pilgrimages to the West Coast. I watched him return. On 2 or 3 occasions I watched from a side road as his sedan DeVille, the same color as his hair, swept by on Route 71 toward Los Angeles. And on a few occasions I watched him leave his place in the Hollywood Hills in the same gray Cadillac to return to Las Vegas. Not often, though. I am a school teacher. School teachers and high-priced hoodlums do not have the same freedom of movement. It's just an economic fact of life. He didn't know I was watching him. I never came close enough for him to know. I was careful. He killed my wife, or he had her killed. It comes to the same either way. Do you want the details? You won't get them from me. If you want them, look them up in the back issues of the paper. Her name was Elizabeth. She taught in the same school where I taught and where I still teach. She taught first graders. They loved her, and I think that some of them probably still remember their love, although they would be teenagers now. I loved her, and love her still, certainly. She was not beautiful, but she was pretty. She was quiet, but she could laugh. I dream of her hazel eyes. There would never be another woman for me, nor ever will there be. He slipped, Dolan. That's all you have to know. And Elizabeth was there at the wrong place and the wrong time to see the slip. She went to the police, and the police sent her to the FBI, and she was questioned, and she said yes, she would testify. They promised to protect her, but either they slipped or they underestimated Dolan. Maybe it was both. Whatever it was, she got into her car one night, and the dynamite wired to the ignition made me a widower. He made me a widower, Dolan. With no witnesses to testify, he was let free. He went back to his world, and I to mine. The penthouse apartment in Vegas for him, the empty tract home for me. The succession of beautiful women in furs and sequined evening dresses for him. The silence for me. The gray Cadillacs, 4 of them over the years for him, and the aging Buick Riviera for me. His hair went silver while mine just went. But I watched. I was careful. Oh, yes, very careful. I knew what he was, what he could do. I knew he would step on me like a bug if he saw or even sensed what I meant for him. So I was careful. During my summer vacation 3 years ago, I followed him, at a prudent distance, to Los Angeles, where he went frequently. He stayed in his fine house and threw parties. I watched the comings and goings from a safe shadow at the end of the block, fading back when the police cars made their frequent patrols. And I stayed in a cheap hotel where people played their radios too loud and the neon lights from the topless bar across the street shone in the window. I fell asleep on those nights and dreamed of Elizabeth's hazel eyes. Dreamed that none of it had happened, and woke up sometimes with tears drying on my face. I came close to losing hope. He was well guarded, you see, so well guarded. He went nowhere without those 2 heavily armed guerrillas with him, and with that Cadillac itself was armor-plated. The big radial tires it rolled on were the self-sealing type favored by dictators in small, uneasy countries. Then, the last time, I saw how it could be done, but I did not see it until after I had a very bad scare. I followed him back to Las Vegas, always keeping at least a mile between us, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. As we crossed the desert heading east, his car was at times no more than a sun flash on the horizon, and I thought about Elizabeth, how the sun looked on her hair. I was far behind on this occasion. It was the middle of the week, and traffic on US 71 was very light. When traffic is light, tailing can become dangerous. Even a grammar school teacher knows that. I passed an orange sign that read detour 5 miles and dropped back even further. Desert detour, slow traffic to a crawl, and I didn't want a chance coming up behind the gray Cadillac as the driver babied it over some rutted secondary road. Detour 3 miles, the next sign read. And below that, blasting area, turn off 2-way radio. I began to muse on some movie I'd seen years before. In this film, a band of armed robbers had tricked an armored car into the desert by putting up false detour signs. Once the driver fell for the trick and turned off onto a deserted road. There are thousands of them in the desert, sheep roads and ranch roads and old government roads that go nowhere. The thieves had removed the signs, assuring isolation, and then simply laid siege to the armored car until the guards came out. They killed the guards. I remembered that. They killed the guards. I reached the detour and turned onto it. The road was as bad as I had imagined, packed dirt, 2 lanes wide, filled with potholes that made my old Buick jounce and groan. The Buick needed new shock absorbers, but shocks are an expense that a schoolteacher sometimes has to put off, even when he is a widower with no children and no hobbies except his dream of revenge. As the Buick bounced and wallowed along, an idea occurred to me. Instead of following Dolan's Cadillac the next time it left Vegas for LA, or LA for Vegas, I would pass it, get ahead of it. I would create a false detour like the one in the movie, luring it out into the waste that exists, silent and rimmed by mountains west of Las Vegas. Then I would remove the signs that the thieves had done in the movie. I snapped back to reality suddenly. Dolan's Cadillac was ahead of me, directly ahead of me, pulled off to one side of the dusty tract. One of the tires, self-sealing or not, was flat. No, not just flat. It was exploded half off the rim. The culprit had probably been a sharp wedge of a rock stuck like a hardpin, like a miniature tank trap. One of the 2 bodyguards was working a jack under the front end. The second, an ogre with a pig face streaming sweat under his brush cut, stood protectively beside Dolan himself. Even in the desert, you see, they took no chances. Dolan stood to one side, slim in an open-throated shirt and dark slacks, his silver hair blowing around his head in the desert breeze. He was smoking a cigarette and watching the men as if he were somewhere else, a restaurant or a ballroom or a drawing room, perhaps. His eyes met mine through the windshield of my car and then slid off with no recognition at all. Although he'd seen me once, 7 years ago, when I had hair, at a preliminary hearing, sitting beside my wife. My terror at having caught up with the Cadillac was replaced with utter fury. I thought of leaning over and unrolling the passenger window and shrieking, "How dare you forget me? How dare you dismiss me?" Oh, but that would have been an act like a lunatic. It was good that he had forgotten me. It was fine that he had dismissed me. Better to be a mouse behind a wainscoting, nibbling at the wires. Better to be a spider, hiding up in the eaves, spinning its web. The man sweating the jack flagged me, but Dolan wasn't the only one capable of dismissal. I looked indifferently beyond the arm waver, wishing him a heart attack or a stroke, or, best of all, both at the same time. I drove on, but my head pulsed and throbbed, and for a few moments the mountains on the horizon seemed to double and even treble. If I had a gun, I thought. If only I'd had a gun. I could have ended his rotten, miserable life right there, and if I'd only had a gun. Miles later, some sort of reason reasserted itself. If I had had a gun, the only thing I would have be sure of was getting myself killed. If I'd had a gun, I could have pulled over when the man using a bumperjack beckoned me, and gotten out, and began spraying bullets wildly around the deserted landscape. I might have wounded someone. Then I would have been killed and buried in a shallow grave, and Dolan would have gone on escorting the beautiful women, and making pilgrimages between Las Vegas and Los Angeles in his silver Cadillac, while the desert animals unearthed my remains and fought over my bones under the cold moonlight. For Elizabeth there would have been no revenge. None at all. The men who traveled with him were trained to kill. I was trained to teach third graders. This was not a movie, I reminded myself, as I returned to the highway and passed an orange "End construction. The state of Nevada thanks you" sign. And if I ever made the mistake of confusing reality with a movie, of thinking that a bald, third-grade teacher with myopia could ever be Dirty Harry anywhere outside of his own daydreams, there would never be any revenge, ever. But could there be revenge, ever? Could there be?